Great, and we're back, Alex Sass Show, and today is a special day with special guests. Bobbie Ensary is usually in the co-pilot seat. Luigi Vendittelli is a guest of honor. What's up, Luigi, man?
How you guys doing?
Good, you?
Very good.
You're kind of local hero, man. Local hero of mine. You you research an UFO subject that is a taboo for most people, matter of belief. For you, it's less of a belief, it's more of a research. But you're here to talk about something really cool that I'm interested in as well. We talked to Professor Don Derry about who you're friends with, and you're touching a lot on the same subjects of abduction and the contact. And we're here to discuss Emily from Ariel Phenomenon, and it's the new documentary coming out shortly, and you were a big part of that, and you're here to share your story. But before we begin, I mean, by day you run the successful marketing company,
right?
By every other time you're UFO researcher. How do you make that segue?
It took a while to get that to balance out properly in life. You know, when you get to a level in work and you have to deal with people on different levels, and you have to then explain to them that if you Google my name, you'll find out that I research aliens. It doesn't always play right in the boardroom, but I made everybody very comfortable with it. And people could see my work, and I'm not somebody who goes out there and just believes anything or claims anything. So they see that I'm very down to earth and very level-headed when I do the work. And they kind of trust me at work too, so it works out, you know.
So like the matter of the belief, right? Like this is the thing we deal with. Like, oh, I don't believe UFOs. Like, what do you say to people that say those things nowadays?
There's a lot of people that keep saying. I mean, people are slowly changing on that notion of believing in UFOs, and it's very important to make the distinction between believing in UFOs and believing in aliens. And that's a big thing, and that's very important to make that distinguish that. So there's a lot of people that still think that it's completely crazy. There's no such thing as a UFO, let alone an alien. And there's people who are slowly opening their mind because mainstream is opening their mind. And we're seeing that slowly with some of the stuff that's come out in mainstream media in the last year. So I deal with it in a very professional way, of course. I tell people you're allowed to believe whatever you believe. It's not a question of belief anymore. It's a question of just being open to information. So believing in a UFO is almost doesn't make sense anymore. Do you believe in UFOs? Well, do you believe in photographic evidence? Do you believe in science? Do you believe in reality? Yes. Well, then you shouldn't talk about believing in it. You should talk about, do you want to look into it?
Or do you want to accept it?
You want to accept it as a reality. And so there's the word believing is no longer, we shouldn't be asking, do you believe in it anymore? As far as aliens are concerned, that's different. And that I would totally respect somebody who says, I don't believe in aliens. I believe in UFOs, because a UFO could be an unidentified flying object that comes from another place, like another country, that sent some type of a really rogue drone to investigate what we're doing. So that could be a UFO. If it operates if it does things, aerial maneuvers that are completely outside of the abilities of our human equipment. There's still people who will say maybe there is a country out there who has that, or maybe the military has that. And then, so the conversation with a lot of people when it comes to aliens is very difficult, but UFOs are kind of open to it, you know? So it's important to really make that distinction. Well, I believe in both.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good. That's good.
And I said I believe in, right?
Bobbie, do you believe in both?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay,
yeah, I
me
mean,
too.
I've seen UFOs firsthand, but I mean, just like with my own theological, education and so forth, I do think that, there's so many traditions that talk about star brothers and star sisters and other civilizations and races and species out there. So yeah.
What is it, Nimanas, right? What were the flying?
In the Hindu Vedas, it's the Vimanas. The Native Americans talk about star brothers and star sisters. And even in the Quran, the opening verses in the Quran, it starts, which was transmitted from the angel Gabriel to Muhammad, we, your creators, command you to believe in Allah. So.
And this whole thing with fallen angels and Nephilim and
all of that.
all of that.
Yeah.
So how do you start the journey of you for research? Like, you don't, like, what was your first experience that kind of like, okay, I want to do this?
I started off when I was really young. I was 9. My grandfather, I come from an Italian background, and very, very, very religious Italian, conservative background. And my entire family is born in Italy, except for me and my sister. And so everybody is hardcore Italian. And my grandfather, who was a military guy in Italy, and then became a prisoner in a concentration camp during Second World War. So we kind of experienced a lot of the second degree of the Second World War horrors. And so it was very believe in God, pray, make sure that, there's always enough past that home. So if there's another war, we can eat for the next 3 years. It was a very different type of growing up compared to some of my Canadian friends. And I was Canadian. And my grandfather, saw a UFO. And it was completely not something that was making any sense to his behavior or his beliefs. And for him to come out and say, I saw a flying saucer, and insist, because a lot of people in the family were laughing at him, saying, oh, come on, you didn't see a flying saucer. You had too much wine or whatever. And he says, no, I saw a flying saucer. And he was really serious about it. As a 9-year-old, I was listening to that, and I was quiet. I wasn't partaking because I wasn't old enough to be in the adult conversation. But I was like, my grandfather wouldn't be lying about that. What did he see? And so it sparked this really big question. And then subsequently to that, I go to school, and my teacher, my 4th grade teacher, I'll never forget, had the entire the planets, the solar system put all over the walls. It was like in the same time. And I thought, that's it. I'm hooked. I got to find out if there's life outside of this planet. And so I started reading. That's all I did. And I wouldn't even go out. My mom thought I had a problem. I had astronomy books in my room, and I was a real geek. I didn't have the pocket protector, but I really was a geek. And I studied astronomy to like almost university level when I was a kid. And it was outside of school time. I was doing this on my own time, summertime. And then in the astronomy books, there was always like a little section at the end that would talk about the potential of life elsewhere. And back in the 80s, like it was a really tiny part of the book. So it was I was going and looking in libraries if there was books that were like more about extraterrestrials, less about stars and planets, because I wanted to know more about how is it possible. And it evolved from there. I found out that, I realized and studied that the universe was so big that, even religion wasn't explaining how big it was. And it was something that a lot of times people would say, God is everywhere. And I remember thinking, these must be really big because the universe is so big, And so I used to have these conversations with people saying, do you realize how big the universe is? And it's like, but don't talk about that. It's like it's you're a geek. And I'm like, well, it's kind of important, So I got into this these libraries. They had certain books, but they were really cheesy sci-fi. Like it was not good until I got to find out there was this organization called MUFON. And I was the youngest member of MUFON in the world back then.
And what year was that?
1989.
Okay.
Yeah. And I still have my cards. They sent me my cards. I was all proud of getting these cards. And I used to go to these meetings. And at the meetings, it was only old people. And my father used to drive me there. And he says, what are you doing
with all these geriatrics?
With all these people? And they're, they're all believing in aliens. So he obviously would stay in case they were crazy.
Take you out.
It was like a process.
Did he go inside with you?
Yeah, of course. Okay. Absolutely. My father was always there to make sure that, everything was okay. And I always made sure that I kept a level head in it. I'm level-headed in general. So in terms of as much as I was interested in it, I wouldn't just jump to conclusions. And a lot of people did. And that was something that I've always remembered being cautious about. I've got to be careful about that. Because you never know,
you can't make assumptions.
Can't make assumptions, right? And I believed in God at the time, and then I went through a phase in my life where I became an atheist, and it was like because it was not making sense to me. In my head was like, there's no way that we were created by God. We must have been created another way. That was I couldn't fit the model that I was being given in church. I couldn't fit it into what I was studying. And I eventually grew out of that atheism and didn't go back into religion, but I more into spirituality. I do believe that there's some type of greater power, if you want to call
Cosmic
it.
Intelligence.
Cosmic intelligence, a really nice way of saying it. Cosmic intelligence. But I wouldn't say it's like a man with a beard or a woman without a beard, hopefully.
They call it the source
Sophia.
sometimes too.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Sophia.
But that's how it progressed. And I found books on Bud Hopkins when I was a kid.
Yes.
And I was reading Bud's books. And again, my mom literally thought I was nuts. Like, she would walk into my room and see these books about, alien encounters. And she was worried about me not being a normal kid.
How would you describe this reaction? I mean, your mom, you have more attachment to your mom, but how much of that is actually it feels like cognitive dissonance? Like you said, even back in the day, you go back into Bible days and you read a lot of evidence of something happening. They even have drawings of Ariel phenomena, actually.
Even in the Bible, they talk Ezekiel,
do. Yeah,
right?
Ezekiel's wheel. Yeah.
The wheels of Ezekiel and
That's
so
right.
forth, right?
So if it's existed information, obviously it wasn't the internet or anything like this, why people's reaction do you think is sort of like, oh no, it doesn't exist, it can't be, you crazy?
Well, that's the big hurdle. The hurdle is that, and after so many years, I can say that it still exists. I mean, there's this craziness of this reaction to it is still very real, is because a lot of people we are programmed to think that that's not possible. We are being told it's not real. We are being told it's sci-fi. And even at the highest levels of Hollywood, where they would want to make us see something that is potentially real, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind from Steven Spielberg, amazing movie. But if you went to Blockbuster, there's no such thing anymore. If you go on Netflix, it's in the sci-fi section. It's
or
not
Trevor Walton's story.
Exactly. It's in sci-fi. It's not considered like a true story. It's not considered in a drama. It's considered sci-fi. So when we go into that sci-fi mode, instantly it's not real.
It's fantasy.
It's fantasy.
Right.
And so we've been programmed in different parts of the world. I mean, you're from Russia. I'm Italian Canadian. Every single country has their way of ridiculing aliens and UFOs. Every single one. And I've seen it in every single one. And there's only the true uneducated areas, and I would say uneducated in a Western way, but if you go to, let's say, in the bushes of Mexico where you meet tribes, they're not going to laugh at you. It's really crazy. You're going to have the people who have never been told, no, it doesn't exist, or it's sci-fi.
They haven't been indoctrinated.
Right. So they're kind of open to it. They're like, wow, this is really cool. This is a really amazing thing. So it's right there. That's when you see, wait a minute, this whole thing has to do with how we're being programmed. And so we're just programmed to say it's not possible.
Well, since you've been raised Catholic, I mean, how much humongous institutions, Catholic Church had something to do with that, for example?
That's
Have
right.
they suppressed this information? Because back in the day, there was internet. But, I mean, back in the day, there was no internet. People went to Catholic Church for the bulletin, right? They went to know who got married, who died, where's the next market is, whatever the story is. So, and all this information was channeled for the same source. And if there's aliens exist outside God, it would create people like you, non-followers, non-believers. So you can see kind of connection there. And
not only non-followers, but maybe a proponent to the devil. Like I'm like an antichrist, or
a demon,
or something, which is actually what a lot of people would consider, because it's the unknown. It's the fear of the unknown. And and I say this to everybody. The biggest challenge for humanity in order for us to evolve, whether that evolution has to do with your own personal feelings or having to do with beliefs of extraterrestrials or whatever, is to go beyond your fear, is to not fear. Don't be afraid. And not being afraid is a very hard thing to do, because every single one of us have innate fears of our own.
Or you go even deeper. I mean, I have a therapy practice. I'll tell you, fear is your default safety mechanism, like flight or fight mode.
That's right.
So, like a lot of what you're talking about when you talk about matter of belief, to understand how vast the civilization is, and there may be civilizations that millions or billions years ahead of us, and we're even less than an ant compared to them. That's kind of frightful, right, to most people. So even on subconscious level, maybe we suppress it. No, that's not real.
Well, just recently, I have a blank. The scientist that just passed away was in a wheelchair.
Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking said that it would probably be beneficial for us to not look for a signal, because you never know if they would want to kill us or if they would want to destroy us.
Yeah, actually, I remember the quote. He basically likened human encountering extraterrestrials as the Europeans encountering the Native Americans of North America and South America. That they would be, they would basically annihilate us.
And so if I were a traditional, I guess, scholar, and I would not be sitting here with the 30 years of experience I have in studying abductions or extraterrestrial contact, I would say, yeah, maybe. And that's possible. Or I would say, nah, that's ludicrous. They would probably be smarter than, if they made it that far, they would not want to kill things.
Or they'd be more evolved spiritually.
That's one way of looking at it. But now, after having done everything, after having researched the field, I would almost say, and this is where that big leap comes, where it goes from I believe in UFOs to do you believe in aliens? Well, do you believe aliens are in your backyard, and do you believe aliens are taking you from your backyard when you don't even know? And that's a reality. It's not something that is some sci-fi hocus pocus thing. And so if that's that reality, me saying it's a reality, that there is an actual active agenda happening, and we don't know what it is, we just know that it's happening, that there's these unknown entities, whether they're alien or not, we don't know, that are coming into our most intimate level of protection, which could be our bedrooms or homes or whatever, and they're taking us with complete full control of what they're doing. This is something that has been documented for decades, and that if that's really what's going on, which I believe it is, then what Hawkins is saying has already happened. Exactly. Because they're doing
it
exactly that. So but what happens is that, and I say this to some, and I feel really bad when I say this to people, when we're sitting at a table and we're not having an interview with people who are somewhat knowledge in this in the field. When you're sitting with people that are we just had a marketing conversation and we're just going to talk about aliens because Luigi knows aliens or about aliens, you can't go from UFOs might be flying around to people are getting abducted. You can't do that, because that's like an elementary teacher wanting to teach a kid something he learned in university. You can't do that. There's a progression of education in that conversation. So people in general are not ready to go that far in the conversation. They're definitely ready to have a conversation about an unknown light in the sky. Now, that's a really big leap in itself, but to go as far as the abduction or contact or the encounters with beings, that's a really big step for people.
Well, you feel like people would suppress something like this too, because it is super scary. Like something can come into my house regardless of how many guns I have, how many doors I have, how many cops around my house, and they can still take you, right? So it's it's a scary subject just to discuss. However, I want to just focus a little bit on evidence, and I know like people like Bob Hopkins and Dan Dundary, they're actually scientists who did the scientific research based on the evidence presented to them through interviews, direct dealings with the abductees or contactees or experiencers, as we say now. But maybe the disconnect is because the primary evidence, like a video of alien walking into your house, taking you out through the walls, windows, and that doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. Those maybe because people are so visual, and we live in a show me kind of situation. Right. Where's the Instagram of that? Where's the YouTube video of that? Right. I would believe this when it's and not just when I have to research it, but when it's mainstream on my feed on my Facebook,
and it's on CNN or something.
And it's on CNN,
right.
Well, there's another thing I'd add to that, if you don't mind me.
I don't.
Yeah, is that today there's a lot of people that have faked those things, mm-hmm. and they're on Netflix, they're on CNN, they're on YouTube, they're on Google, they're on the internet, and they've caused more harm to the little amount of real evidence that we have than anything that's ever happened before, because those fakes are causing people to say, you see, everything's fake.
Right.
And I call them the booger in the soup.
It delegitimizes everything,
that's
basically, right?
So it's like, I call it, I have the term booger in the soup, where you have all this amazing evidence, and that's all the vegetables and all the good stuff, and it's boiling, and somebody comes in and just throws a booger in the soup, and nobody wants to have the soup.
Bowl and the punch bowl, right?
Right, exactly. So, and that's the problem. So, yeah, there's the fact that there's no Instagram video of the alien bringing people out, but yet there's the Instagram video of somebody faking the alien bringing somebody out, and then 90% of the people are going to see, it's all crap.
Is it a disinformation? We had this conversation with Professor Dandera in the show before, and he said that, it would be scary for people to realize that your government cannot protect you. Thus, what's the point of the government in the first place,
exactly.
right? So maybe the government itself, beside reproducing the alien vehicles and trying to get as much information for national security purposes, et cetera, how much of that is being misled and suppressed by sources associated with that, like control release or disinformation in that sense? Like maybe information being put out like this because, what is because?
The release of information is also in conjunction to national security, mm-hmm. and that's a very important thing. And I sometimes am a proponent for the secret of extraterrestrial reality versus wanting to disclose it. I know this is really crazy because most of us are trying to get this disclosed in public.
Right.
But some things shouldn't be disclosed, and certain people should not be getting this information. Have access. And it sounds almost discriminatory saying that, but it is not. It's actually a national security problem. And so what we're talking about is not about, hey, I got this really new cool picture of the new Audi that's coming out next year. We're talking about, hey, I have this technology that can control time. Mm-hmm. So that's a really big thing. You can't just say that. And
well, there's a lot of responsibility which comes with that kind of power, right?
That's right.
So it kind of goes to the whole philosophy, the Tower of Babel, right? Maybe we're all separated for that reason and have different borders and nationalities and military complexes is to actually keep us off knowing what the actual real thing happening in space and universe, etc. They're aliens. So it's back to basics, like why can't we all get along? Like is this being done intentionally, like white versus black, Democrat versus Republican, Russia versus
that's a little
America.
bit conspiratorial.
Well, it conspiratorial or not, I mean, you can see that there's a huge divide between people that open-minded and research into subjects of UFO and people that don't even want to look at it. They already have it, like a new term, what do we call it, NPC? Non-player character. You haven't heard about it yet. You would have fun with that. So it's a non-player character. It's
non-player character.
That's it's the whole new thing with memes, and they find to be some people find to be very offensive because non-player character is a term for a video game for the character not essential to the gameplay, right? So like a background kind of character that may have
non-player character.
So it's the new term for like a derogatory term like sheeple for the people that kind of have the indoctrination and they look into the solution to the man, etc., etc. So how much of this, like this information being controlled and progressed, like who doesn't want us to know that aliens exist, that abduction phenomena is going on, and for which reason outside. Because I don't believe, I think I agree with you, for national purposes like this, if you don't want some bad guys to have a time machine, whoever bad guys are.
Right.
But why do bad guys exist in the first place?
The one thing that I always tell people is, and actually one of the things that got me, that awakened in me during the years of working also with Emily, because she had this contact with these beings and all that, which made me reflect on life a lot. So one of the things is that I realized is the more we research extraterrestrial contact or interspecies contact, which is unknown entities and us, the more it seems to be directing us to study us and not us to study them, which is what is so hard to absorb, because we seem to think that we got our shit together and we have no idea what we're doing. And this is something that is so humbling if you're able to be humbled by it, because some people just say, no, we've got this, and no, we don't. And it's important to recognize that. And it's important to recognize how horrible we are as a species, because we oftentimes forget, as we're sitting here and we're all good people, and I'm presuming nobody's a murderer in here and nobody's a rapist. So we're just good people. And we have good thoughts, and we have good activities, and we have good gestures, and we try our best to be good people. But that's not the case with humanity. And that's not the case with people doing things. As we're sitting here having this interview, probably a kid is getting raped, and probably somebody's getting tortured, and an animal is getting abused, or they're doing something horrible somewhere. And this is happening every single day. And we, as much as somebody wants to block away the reality and the fear of the unknown about maybe a potential extraterrestrial existence, most of us block out what's really going on every day. And that's something that we do, because most of our friends will say, well, don't think about that because you're going to have a bad day.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Without addressing it. They sort of
Or
sweep it under the rug.
you'll just get overwhelmed by the amount of negativity out there.
There's too much of it, right?
Right.
And so as a species, and this is what I believe that this species was trying to communicate to these children, is that we need to start looking at us.
We need to look in the mirror more closely.
Right. It's not about them. It has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with us.
So
Actually, I want to add something, because I remember watching Star Trek. I think one of the movies, was First Contact. And it was the idea that there were a lot of alien races out there, but we were considered so primitive that they wouldn't even bother dealing with us. Until one scientist figured out warp speed, sent out a signal, the Vulcans picked it up, and they came to check it out, right?
So a connective in dots based on your example, your ascension symptoms. So maybe the whole thing, they're helping us to ascend, meaning to open up hearts, to open our minds and raise our vibrations, so to speak, as people say, to actually, to make the contact for them to land on the White House lawn. Because we're ready to accept it, but we have to raise our own vibration.
Because I remember in that film, they talk about, once alien contact was established, it transformed the culture on Earth.
That's right.
Borders disappeared,
Everything
religions
changes.
disappeared,
That's right.
Economies disappeared. People would just realize that they're all in it together. There was a huge transformation within society and organizations and everything. So it was a total game changer. Do you think that's something that could be at work here?
If we as a species would be able to do all that today, I would be so incredibly surprised that I would bet my life that we can't. That's how sure I think we are not ready to do that.
That we're falling short of the benchmark,
yeah.
Right?
Because we have a society of separations, like you said, the Tower of the Babel. We are so separated. We are so divided, and everything is just always the extreme of another. And we base also our arguments on the hatred of the other person, even if the other person could be right. And this is something that we see all the time in anything. I see it in work. We see it in politics. I see it everywhere. So just because your competitor is doing that, you are just going to beat them on that point. Meanwhile, they could be completely right
to begin with.
Right. So we, as a species, always respond in a very aggressive, very unevolved way.
So, Luigi, I wanted to ask you, because, of the last point that you were making, do you think that this hatred and this inability for people to not get on, and the fact that the aliens may be pointing to us to evolve a little bit more, I come from a more spiritual background. And one of the teachings that I was always presented with is that man is both animal and divine, that there is an animalistic side and then that there's a divine side, and that the whole idea of evolution is for us to come into our divinity. Do you think that all these separations, these negative things that we discussed, has something to do that we're so tribalistic, and there's a part of us that is so animalistic and just wants to hit the other tribe and just...
I think that there's that's a good question. I would say I don't know if I can answer that properly. What I can say is that there's a lot of things that have been programming us. And so I would point more at what programs us versus what we are innate internally,
right?
Because what programs us is more powerful than us, because it can control us. So if you as an animal, we're an animal, we are, and although we are able to thought process and we're very intelligent, we're still an animal. We still have to eat. We still have to. We have to drink. We have to survive. And if we're cold, we want to be warm. If we're warm, we want to be cold. There's a lot of things that are absolutely natural, animalistic instincts. But what if something was able to program us in a way to use that animalistic instinct in a negative way? Is that's more powerful than the actual instinct? Because the instinct is a tool. It's like a radio-controlled car. There's a little mechanism that makes the wheels turn right when you turn right on the remote. So if I'm turning right and there's a baby there and accelerate, well, the car is really just doing what it's being programmed to do. It could do it, but it's being programmed to do it. So I think that we have to review what we program humanity with. If you look at and there's a lot of studies out there about civilized tribes that are completely separate from everyday. And are they violent? No. Are they conquerors? No. If you look at certain innate behaviors, yeah, they're hunters. They have to. They got to eat. Right? And so there's certain things they do that are completely normal. They should be doing this because they have to survive. And there's things they absolutely don't do and don't understand when we do. So if you look at the Amazon jungle in Brazil, there was a time where Wendy's, I remember I was in college, I was studying this. Wendy's was responsible for the deforestation in South America. And Michael Jackson, I got involved at the time. I remember that. And there was a really serious problem. It was really bad, and there was no internet and no Facebook to talk about it, and it was very difficult to get that message across. That's why Michael Jackson had got involved to try to raise awareness of what the hell was going on down there. Now, the tribes could not understand the logic of what was happening. Now, we can say, well, Wendy's is a really evolved company that is making food and is selling food everywhere, making billions of dollars, and it needs bags to put that food in, and it needs paper to wrap those burgers in, and that's an incredible feat in itself. Yes, it is. But is that feat really incredible if it's completely destroying our forest, and if it's displacing certain tribes? Is that really evolution? Are we mixing our ideas? So we have programmed the people working at Wendy's to think that's a really great idea. Meanwhile, they can't see it. They don't see where that logic comes from, and they didn't go to school. They don't have MBAs in marketing. They don't have MBAs in legal. There's no lawyers in there. So there's a lot of programming that is causing that harm, and they don't know how to put a suit and tie on and come in a boardroom and say, we're going to open 350 new restaurants. They don't know how to do that, but they sure as hell not going to come in our backyard and destroy whatever we have, because they know that's wrong.
All right.
But it's also,
I get it. No, yeah.
It's perfect. And also, like, what we're learning now, what you brought up in terms of like terrible people, this and programming, we not only don't live in sync with each other, we don't live in sync with the environment.
The planet.
Don't have,
That's right.
We don't have a relationship.
Totally.
But I think, that, like, I mean, in my experience with the Native American tribes, they do. They actually look at, like, brother wolf, sister raven. Like, they actually think there is
Mother Earth.
There is a symbiotic relationship with the planet, which, they may be wearing skins and they may not have, like, Italian leather shoes and, like, smartphones and stuff. But to me, they're a much more civilized civilization, if you want to say that, because they don't shit where they eat.
So going back to suppression question, like, is that like all those tribes that was so in tune with what do they call when we destroy them to suppress the information about things that we should all know? It should be part of a curriculum in school or at your home.
There is a systemic eradication of alternative media, of alternative knowledge. Like, I mean, that's why I think the Native Americans were eradicated. Completely. Like, even here in Canada, we have a problem with, like, Native American women being murdered. Their rates are just sky high. Why? So, like, the narrative that they present to the world, as opposed to this Western, European, Anglo-Saxon, or Christian Judaic narrative that we've all internalized and accepted to some extent, they don't talk about Atlantis, for example, but the Hopi talk about Lemuria. They talk about they talk about other pre-existing civilizations. So, but I mean, you're not going to find that in any dialogue. You're never going to read that in a book in university.
One of my cousin in Italy is she has a master's degree in Egyptology, and she's an archaeologist, very well respected archaeologist in Rome, and she knows I do this research. And we were having lunch. I was in Italy. I was at her house, and we were sitting there having beautiful family lunch. And she's sitting next to me, and she kind of, and this is somebody who's like very, very well respected in the academic world of archaeology. And she kind of like hits me and she says, I know you study that, the unknown. And I said, yeah. And she says, it's interesting. I said, I'm interested in knowing what you know. Right? That's what I said. I said, there's things in Egypt that just don't make sense. And she didn't want to say it loud. She says, you're right. A lot of things don't make sense. And so here is the proof. Something doesn't make sense, but it doesn't say it anywhere. They're not going out going, it doesn't make sense. Let's look at that. It's totally put aside. It's like, no.
Well, you're not going to talk yourself.
Archaeology.
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't fit. It doesn't, you can't finish the book.
But you're not going to talk yourself out of the grant, right? So, like, how are you going to say, I don't really know what I'm talking about? No, I do know what I'm talking about. Give me money for it, right?
That's right. Exactly.
So that's the point. So let's get straight to the Ariel phenomenon.
Yes.
Like, I'm fascinated with the
Ariel
whole subject.
phenomenon.
The Ariel
There you go.
phenomenon represent. You've made a switch at one point from UFO research to abductee research, and you have some experience in that. And now you have a distinction between abductee and contactee. But Ariel phenomenon movie is based on what?
Contact. Ariel phenomenon, I would say, mainly is, if anybody's familiar with what happened in 1994, these kids were in a primary school in South Africa, in Zimbabwe, and rural Zimbabwe. It's called Ruwa, Zimbabwe, and they were out at recess, and this is a big schoolyard. These kids were out, and the teachers were having a teacher meeting inside, and the kids are playing, and suddenly these kids see these crafts in the air, and they're shimmering this really bright light, and this very high pitched sound is happening, and this one of the crafts lands between two trees, and these beings come out. And this is like not far from the kids.
And in broad daylight.
In broad daylight. This is like 10:15 in the morning. It's sunny, beautiful sunny day in Africa. And so here you're seeing these beings coming out of this ship. Now these beings are these little people with these big heads and these big black eyes.
The Greys?
Well, actually it's funny. The immediate description sounds like the Greys because they're very slim and they have the big heads and the big black eyes. A lot of the kids remember them being black and not gray or not light skin. Mm-hmm. Some kids remember them being very light skin, like almost white. So there's a difference in perception from mm-hmm. certain kids. One of the beings had apparently black long hair, which is completely not what we hear in terms of the general description of the Greys or extraterrestrial encounters. And some of the kids said they were wearing these black jumpsuits, like mm-hmm. really tight black jumpsuits. And so what happened is Emily Trim, which is one of the famous Emily I was talking about, she was one of the children that was there, and she was with another little girl, and they were hopping on the wood. They had these logs, where the logs were put down. They created a barrier mm-hmm. for the kids, and so they would play a game where they would hop around the log barrier. And so they were further away from the whole group of kids, and Emily and this little girl just hopping. And they turn around, and these two beings are right there, like they're right in front, like you and me. And as the beings locked eyes, it was like instant communication, and it was a telepathic. She says it was really overwhelming. It was like an explosion of information, and she says it was like if you took a book and you just flipped thousands of pictures, and it was like,
so it was like she was being downloaded information.
She was being like tons of information, all in one like in very short period of time.
Instance, yeah.
And then the last image, which she saw and the little girl saw and the kids that were nearby, was this huge explosion, like a fireball. And this is what they got. And she's seeing, and she could describe the beings being black. She says the skin was black. She says it looked like a reptile, like the skin of a reptile. And she says, and it shimmered in the light as it moved. You could see the light reflecting. So it went from black to like lighter black.
It was like iridescent.
Yeah, because of the way the light was shining on them. And one of them, extended its hand out to the little girl next to her, and the other girl extended her hand, and they almost touched hands. And Emily got scared and grabbed the little girl's hand. So we got to go. And the school bell rang, and as the school bell rang, it distracted them, and they were gone. They were just instantly not there. And so that night, so what happened was the kids received a lot of the kids received this download, and some kids saw how we're treating the planet badly. Some kids made mention about water. Some kids made mention about the air. Liesel made a mention that we're not taking care of. We have to be careful about our water and our air because all the trees would go down, and she saw all the trees going down and everybody dying, and nobody could breathe. This is like 7-8-year-olds who have never been exposed to sci-fi, scary movies or anything like that in rural Zimbabwe, where they don't have any magazines telling them that this could be an alien or a ship. They don't even have cable. They had cable. They had 4 channels, and there wasn't really anything interesting on those 4 channels. So they're in complete shock. Like they have no idea what the hell is going on, and they're really honest about it, and they're kids. And so the Emily's reaction what she remembers is that the message to her was not about pollution or was not about the earth. It was about technology. and it was about it. She felt the message being, there's a good way of using technology, there's a bad way of using technology, you can do better. Now these are kids, and to kind of, I would hope that one day we put to rest that famous thing that everybody says, well, if aliens are real, why don't they just land on the White House lawn? Because the White House is full of liars, okay? And the White House is full of snakes. And it's a true statement. Whether that person who I'm claiming to be a snake is or not, they have to lie. It's part of the agenda. There's certain things we don't say because we have to be careful to protect our country.
Is it a Freudian slip? By snakes, you mean like reptilians?
No. I mean, they're not.
No, I understand they're not real. Yeah,
they're not. Yeah,
they're not sincere.
They're not sincere people. It's like if you say, hopefully aliens will land in a law firm's office. It's like, well, it's kind of not the right place for them to land either, because that's also a place where they're professionally manipulating truths.
Right.
So where is it that we should have this landing? How about a schoolyard in Africa?
Innocent kids
where they have absolutely nothing.
And no agenda.
Right. That's where the aliens should be landing, because we as people should be paying attention to these kids who have not been trained to lie, not been trained to tell us.
Haven't been corrupted or programmed too much anyway.
Yeah.
That's where the real message gets through.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like, the sighting of of Mother Mary in Fatima.
Right.
The three little kids.
That's right. It's children.
Right.
So we have to look at the incredible power. A lot of people would always say, why would they land in Africa in front of children? Like they almost belittled the aliens by saying, why would they do that? And I said, you're totally wrong. I mean, you're looking at this in your framework of thinking the White House is the right place to land. No, at all.
It's funny you say that, because I remember President Jimmy Carter actually had.
Right.
He cited something and he talked about it.
That's right. He did.
Yeah.
Reagan as well, actually, while he was flying in the jet with Nancy Reagan. They saw a UFO. But the reality is that when something on such a small level, like you were saying earlier, you were talking about where energy is felt, where positive things are. It's not where there's the masses. It's where there's peace and quiet, and you have the opportunity to really connect. So if we go, and who are the real savants, the real amazing people to meet in today's world? It's not the people that are looking for popularity or looking to have 18 million viewers on their Instagram or whatever. It's the people that truly do that work. Mm-hmm. They truly mean it. Mm-hmm. And that's where my opinion, I could be completely wrong, but my opinion is that's why they landed next to that school. Because it was really honest. It was pure in every sense of the word. And there was not even one adult in that schoolyard that was there. They were all inside. So it was only children. So the message was really transmitted to absolute purity. And that's what I see. That's the message I got from it.
It reminds me of that quote in the Bible that, you can only enter the kingdom of God if you become a child again.
Isn't that cool?
Right.
Yeah. Because of our honesty. My sister just had a baby, and I'm in love with her. And you just look at kids and you just stare in their eyes, and there's just no agenda. There is nothing in their eyes that says they want to sneak by. Maybe she wants extra cookies. I don't know. But I'm saying, you know what I mean? It's the purity of a child. And we as adults, the more we evolve and the more we learn, the more we should be humbled by the fact that those children can continue to teach us forever, because they're always looking at it in the real
innocent way.
Yeah, that's true. And a lot of kids do have, you have a lot of stories of the kids having weird experiences, supernatural, etc. experiences. And then the disconnect is when they go to the adults, and adults already programmed with some kind of sort of beliefs.
That's right.
There's no communication.
That's right.
Even if the kid was abducted and he comes in, there was a monster in my room, and the parent is like, you're not watching those cartoons anymore. Right,
yeah.
that's it. And there's the usually conversation is there, and then the kid continues to have nightmares or visitations, etc. And we really don't know. There's a disconnect. So I think you're right. We should become more children again and just start to observe and listen. Maybe there is something to it. Let me ask you this. Like, I mean, we talk about experiences, and you brought up in the story that the ship just disappeared and aliens just disappeared. So it feels like an interdimensional kind of experience. And we talk about religious experiences and everything else. Like, how much of, like the whole thing, maybe there's aliens already here. Maybe they don't even live on another planet. They live here on Earth, but just within separate dimension.
That's two different things. Like when we talk about Ariel, we had the opportunity in I can't remember if it was July or August. We were in Philadelphia, and Randall Nickerson showed everybody in the crowd an additional piece of the film, which was really telling. It's a pilot from South African Airlines who saw the craft, and it was caught on radar. So in that context, it's not interdimensional. It's in our dimension. It's caught on radar. There's a physical...
There's evidence, yeah.
Evidence. There's more physical evidence to disclose, and that's going to come through with the film. But yes, we have to always consider there's many different species of extraterrestrials. There's not just one type of extraterrestrial. And within every species, there's different agendas, different technologies, different things they do. So yes, it's very possible that there are some that are interdimensional. I do absolutely agree with that.
So me and Bobbie talk about this all the time, the whole Elon Musk and Matrix situation, and this being a simulation. And I tend to agree with him in like when you talk about UFOs. When we look at something, we go outside right now, we look in the sky, and we see something we don't recognize. It's not a plane, it's not a balloon, it's not a Chinese lantern, it's not a helicopter. Where is it, right? We have very little, we can only observe. We have very little understanding of what we're looking at, and we have limited perception. It's like the natives, when the Columbus came with the ships, they didn't see the ships because it wasn't part of their perception. And more than that, what about this whole Carl Sagan comparison, two-dimensional, three-dimensional universe? When we throw a ball at two-dimensional universe, all they see is a disk or point where the ball touches the dimension. What if it's the same kind of situation, that everything we experience from aerial phenomena to contact and abduction is just such a tip of the iceberg? It's like ants on an anthill, right? You come up to them, they may even recognize a human, how big it is and what about to do to you, but they don't know the human lives in the house and has a passport, right? Like, how do, like,
it's amazing.
All this information that we receive is so limited to what it really is.
Right.
We have to rely on information coming from witnesses like those kids that you talked, and just accepting this information for what it is a challenge in itself. How do we overcome this and just become totally open-minded in receiving this information? How do we overcome this negative programming of being constantly closed-minded to those subjects?
How do we overcome it?
Yeah.
I mean, overcoming that would be the first steps for us to become able to do that as a community as a species is to remove two big layers that we have, and that would be money and religion. So if you would consider how we would operate as a species without money and without religion, then maybe we would have an opportunity to open ourselves to a level to fix that. But money and religion blocks that. It's like saying, I would really like for you to swim across the St. Lawrence, but can you carry these 800-pound weights? Well, no, I can't do it. It doesn't matter how much I want to do it. I really want to do it, but I won't be able to do it because there's a physical...
The laws of physics.
Yeah, that's right, laws of physics. So what happens is we have to survive. We have to. And it's amazing how we are conditioned to the way money makes us have to survive. We're forced to do certain things sometimes because money is needed. So how many people have sacrificed their their values because they have to make sure they get enough money to feed their kids or whatever, and it's crazy. So money is a big impediment to the evolution of things to fix any of the things we're talking about. And then religion is basically don't do it. If you do that, you're wrong. If you do that, you're wrong. If you do that, you're gonna burn in hell. If you do that, you're gonna burn in hell. You're gonna be with the devil for eternity. And it's constant fear tactics and limitations, and we're throwing monkey wrenches into people's
dogma. Right,
yeah.
Right.
So money and religion will always stop us. And any of those questions, any of those things that we have to fix will never get fixed if we have money and religion. And that's the problem. If you look at the core issue of humanity, where's the cancer? Yul bubu. Where is the bubu? You know? It's like you have cancer, you can take a Tylenol. Okay, you might feel better for like 15 minutes, but you have cancer. So it's same thing here, is that we have to fix the core issues. We can't pretend that we're going to get to fixing them while we have these two core problems.
So we have this big eyesore that we got to take
tumors,
out our vision to see.
You
Tumors,
can't fix it. And contact with another species is possible. But it doesn't mean that contact with another species is possible like we would like it to be. So, it's like saying you meet a really beautiful girl, you want to talk to her, you want to date her. She'll say hi to you. Doesn't mean you're dating her. You want that job. You really want to have that position. You talk to the owner of the company, he'll say, nice to meet you. Send me your resume. Doesn't mean you got the job. So whenever we say we're going to have contact and contact will change things, not necessarily. Contact might just literally be contact. Mm-hmm. That's it. We still have a long way to go before we get that job, before we are able to go to a level where they'll have another contact with us. And I also believe that, and this is my belief, and some people believe this, that in light of the evolution of humankind, talking about ancient aliens, we could definitely see there was some type of other entity that was influenced. We were influenced. And this is for millennia. This is going back thousands of years, and many different types of. Is it possible that they're also manipulating us because they're trying to change us? Is it possible they're making mistakes over time and they keep reprogramming or recreating a new version of us? Is it possible that they're completely nuts? Is it possible that we're completely wrong and that we're just a laboratory,
a lab experiment?
Everything is possible at this point. Everything. And we have to always also remember to basically close this off at saying, imagine Hindu, Russian, Italian. We didn't grow up the same way. We grew up similar, but not the same way. We didn't eat the same foods. We didn't speak the same language. And that's just us. And all three of us are human. The variety and the amount of differences within our own species is insane. Imagine multiple different species with multiple different agendas.
And intelligences.
Right. We are so beyond figuring it out. We have not even begun understanding what it's all about. Not even close.
Right.
Not even close. So we have to first look at us. We have to stop focusing on them like a lot of people focus on, want to know. Before you want to know that, focus on us.
Wow, this has been great. I'd like to talk more about Ariel phenomenon when you come back next time when this movie is released.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I'd like to discuss the Emily story. This is an incredible story, and looking forward to talking to you again in the future. You're an amazing guest, and
Awesome.
thank you for opening our hearts and removing our fears. And
Well, thank you,
we hope
guys.
we can learn
Yeah.
from you and pass the message. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
We'll wrap on this, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Ciao.